Hi, welcome to Knit Easy tutorial channel. Today I'm going to show you how to knit this beautiful, easy, beginner-friendly felted garter stitch bag. The materials what we need for this is a Sandnes 100% non-superwash Norwegian wool. This is an iron to light bulky weight yarn and felts beautifully. We also need measuring tape, tapestry needle, couple of stitch markers, they're lock-in ones, and pair of straight needles. This is US 10, they're 10-inch long. And optional is the leather handle and also a button. The knitting process starts with a garter stitch piece. So that's the piece we knit. The garter stitch piece is measuring 13.5 inches long and 6.5 inches wide. The felting process will shrink this to final product, which is going to be 6 by 6 inches. While we are finished knitting this piece, we fold this over and we measure about 5 inches on each side by using these markers to mark and tie it so that we can evenly then have a flat piece measuring 3 inches, and using a tapestry needle to sew in the ridges here with a mattress stitch. And then after that we can make a little loop like this, and it's ready to felt. Let's get started. Next we're gonna long tail cast on without using a slip knot, and we need also extra yarn tail here to sew on the mattress stitch with this leftover yarn. So to cast on we need 22 stitches total for this garment. And I have estimated about 1 inch per stitch, so it's 22 stitches plus 12 additional inches, and 12 additional inches is for sewing the bag sides later. I have measured out with my measuring tape total of 34 inches, and I placed a marker, which is the lock-in marker, which you can remove later. So once I marked my short tail and the working yarn coming from that ball, take your short tail over your thumb with your yarn hanging in front so that the 34 inches is just hanging down here on your front. And the long tail coming from the working yarn is going to be over your index finger. Now you can remove the marker and secure the yarn tails with your 3 fingers below. Take your needle in your right hand and bring the needle over the yarn between your thumb and the index finger like this. Twist your needle downward. As you go downward, you twist it, and you're gonna have this twisted stitch is your first stitch. Now go under the thumb loop, catch the yarn from your index finger, bring it back to the thumb loop, and release your thumb, and that is 2 stitches casted on. Repeat these steps until you have all 22 stitches on your needles. After we have casted on 22 stitches, we'll now take the short tail and wrap it around our 2 fingers like a loop and secure it with a stitch marker. Now we need to knit stitch. And how do you make a knit stitch? Is the most basic stitch in the knitting. So first we take this, cast it on edge with the needle. Our left hand and empty needle is going to be in your right hand. You push these stitches upward a little bit, so you have about inch or an inch and a about the inch on the needle tip left. And you cover your hand with your palm with the needle. Alright, so you hold the needles with the cast on stitches in your left hand and empty needles in your right hand. Insert the right needle through the first stitch on the left needle from left to right, front to back, like so. Now you have to hold your both needles with left hand. So you use your thumb, your index finger and middle finger to support your needles, because we need the right hand to take the yarn tail and wrap it around counterclockwise over the right needle and in between two needles. And you pull it tighter. So then you take your right hand and the yarn, you hold on to the yarn in the left hand and you pick it or push it downwards so that this loop comes looser, and you pull the stitch off from your left needle. We'll repeat this motion until you have knitted all the stitches. You see the right needle is going up and down movement. It helps to have pretty loose and not very tight. You pull it out a little bit and then you push it out again and take off the left stitch. And if the needles, if the stitches are going to be too down, it will be very hard for you to slip off from a left needle. So you have to kind of push them upward and hold it with your fingers on your left hand fingers, and use your right needle to scoop out the new stitch. And you knit all the stitches till the end. You have 22 stitches total knitted on your right hand needle. Here's your last stitch of this row. You knit that stitch and take your empty needle to right hand and full needle to your left hand. You're changing the hands and you push these stitches a little bit upward so it's easier, closer to take off from a left needle when it's needed. Again, you take your right needle, push it under the left needle and support those two needles with your left hand, and then take your yarn counterclockwise in between and keep knitting until you have reached a total of 13.5 inches of the length. Now that you have finished knitting 13.5 inches, you are ready to bind off. Well, to begin, knit the first 2 stitches as usual. Now, insert the left needle into the first stitch on the right needle, right here. Lift the first stitch over the second stitch and off the right needle. And you tighten the yarn in the back a little. Knit 1 more stitch. And repeat lifting the first stitch over the second stitch and off the needle. And you tighten a little bit. You repeat this motion until all the stitches have been binded off. Now that you have one more stitch left here, you loosen that stitch a little bit and you cut the yarn tail. However, you have to leave a yarn tail at least 12 inches here, because we're going to need that yarn tail. So you pull this yarn tail through that loop, the last loop, and you tighten it. Now that you have finished knitting this piece, you fold it over, and first of all we have to measure. We need to fold this piece for the bucket pouch area about 5 inches from each side, so that you have 3 inches or 3.5 inches of flap piece. And we secure it with a stitch marker. These are the lock-in ones, which you can remove once you're ready to mattress stitch, or when you're done with your mattress stitch. You just lock them in place, so this way your garment doesn't slide and you're ready to sew. You need a tapestry needle with a blunt edge. There are many different tapestry needles, but the most important part of the tapestry needle would be the bigger eye. The easy way to thread your tapestry needle would be just pinch. You don't want to thread it like this because it's very difficult. So what you want to do is you want to fold this yarn and pinch it between your two fingers, and makes like a sharper edge, and it's easier to kind of slide through your needle. And you leave plenty of yarn tail and just a little bit hanging from the other side of your needle. You take one of your sides and start mattress stitch. So what you do here is basically you're going into these ridges. So these are ridges of the garter stitch. You're going into the first ridge here, other side of your fabric, and you're pulling it together. And then you go back to the very first one to secure that one. And you keep going in that fashion. You go to the next stitch, you pull your yarn through, and your next garter ridge on the other side of the work. So you go back to the side which nearest to you, find that ridge, and you go under that ridge with your needle. And so here it is. Oh, maybe this is a little bit better. And you pick up the ridge from the other side like that, and and again from the opposite side. And so you make this little, like, you can leave it a little bit looser and then pull together later on. You picking up these ridges from one side and then from the other side, and you go in and do not skip any of these ridges. Just pick up from both sides of the ridges until you picked up all stitches to the end of the tip here. So now you are all the way to the end of the ridge, and as you go you just tighten up your yarn. You pull it, but so that the edge is closed like that, but it's not keeping open anywhere. In this felting process, it will tighten this area and it's not going to be visible at all. And so you can take this needle here and just kind of go in like that. And I just go in and weave this into one of the garter ridges, and in the felting process it will be felted in. And don't keep it too tight, this has to be still stretchable. And you can go in about halfway, it would be enough. Once you're done with that, you can just cut the tail end right from here. And you're done on this one side, and you start doing the other side. Other side is a little bit different because you're gonna have a yarn hanging from this end, which is the flap. So for that, we need to take the yarn again, pinch it on the fingers and put it on your needle. And you just simply have to go down by following this ridge. Just go under this ridge like that, and just keep going all the way down until you reach the area you have to knit together. Once you have reached that area, you start same way, going from one side to another, taking one ridge, needle in, the second ridge you needle in, and so forth, crisscrossing from one side to another side, the same way until your end of your bottom corner. Next step is to make a little loop here, so we can put a button here and the loop close the flap in the top. For that, we have some ends which we already wove in. Now we can just snap these off, or unless you already cut them, then you are ready for the loop. So for the loop, we need to measure the flap. This is 6.5, so we're gonna do about 3 1/4, and so this is about right. And we can put a marker or something to demarcate that area, because that's how we're gonna go in to make a loop. So now we take a yarn, and you take a yarn about 60 inches of the length and put it on your needle the way I showed you before, and double it so it's double. And you hold your bag this way that your pouch is up and your flap is down, and you go into these. This is your middle line here, so you take 2 reaches from your middle line, 1, 2, and you go into that second ridge underneath, and you just go up like that under the ridges until you come out of the end. And you pull your yarn tail all the way in, and so until it disappears. This part will be felted into the fabric. And here's your marker, and you go in from 1, 2. So this would be the second line going down like this, about the same distance as you did go, just like a 1 ridge before, about before the beginning of the pouch. That is to secure your tail. And you're gonna take a pen, which everybody would have at home, and helps to keep this, and you keep it looser so it's not like tight. We can remove this marker here, and you put the pen in the middle here, and that will be your guide about how tight you want your loop to be. So I'm estimating that you want your loop to have enough space, the button to go through. So right now the buttonhole will be about 1 inch. You go under the other ridge here to secure and go back. So for now, this here is secured. The loop is secured. And we go back the same way, or up the same way as we did before, until we reach that very first loop. And just keep it loose so that these ridges, they don't get distorted and they still look like ridges. Now we're gonna make this part here more sturdier. So what you're gonna do is you hold your yarn with your left hand and you take your needle with your right hand and you basically go in here inside, not outside, but inside of that tail, and you're making these little loops and you tighten it like that. So you're going in from top to bottom and come out of that loop the same way, and you tighten this. You go in from top to bottom and coming out of inside that loop and tighten it. Let's see if I can get a little bit closer. So what I'm doing here is I'm making a loop with my yarn and going inside of that loop we created earlier and then outside of that loop, and making another loop, and you just keep going until you filled this whole part of it up to this part. You can hold with your hand to just kind of help it around. Depend on how big your button is going to be. You can also make this distance shorter. You can do 1/2 inch here, but the shrinking process will shrink some of it. Now this is your last loop here. So here you have this loop here, and now you're going in with the leg of this yarn. Take this loop from here and go down with a second loop under those ridges, pull it down straight, and this is what's holding your loop now. And you can just go and weave this one in here because it will fell into your garment, and just loosen it up so that it's not very tight. Then you can just cut off your yarn. So this is what it looks like when it's ready. It looks like ours. It's pretty good center here, and then your button is going to be sewed on there later. So this is what it looks like. And now your bag is ready to felt. So before we do the felting, we need a bubble wrap. This is a small bubble wrap and it's 12 by 12 square. We fold this half and fold that to half, and we fold over edge about 1 inch. And then we take our bag and put it inside the pouch, the bubble wrap. So the bubble wrap should be evenly distributed. Okay, let's secure it like that, it's better. And if you have a little washing netting bag, you can put it in. I'll show you here. So you take your bag and put it into either a little gauze bag and put it in a washing machine, or if you have a garment washing bag, just put it in that bag. And this way it just keeps better shape. And when you go to the washing machine, you're gonna start with the shorter setting. I will show you the setting in the next clip. It doesn't matter if you have a front loader or top loader. You put your garment inside, close your door, and your setting, what I'm using also is just a very regular, just a little bit of detergent. So I will put a small amount in a cap and I will put it here. Or you can put it directly in with your bag. And now the settings on the washing machines are different. However, you want to use the quick wash setting. The most important thing here is the temperature. The temperature should be hot. So if you have extra hot, you can, or hot will be actually the best. And then this is the spinning, which is also good to have it on high. And you can have extra light here. So that gives you 20 minutes. However setting you have, which is short, the most important setting is the heat and the height of the spin. You don't want to do it more than 20 minutes when you start. If your bag needs more, you might have to do additional 20 minutes, depending on how it looks. So, and then we just hit the play and it starts washing. I will answer it out right now. Now that we have felted our bag for a total of 40 minutes and dried it for a total of 30 minutes, it's dirty enough. But your washer and dryer are a little bit different, so you have to do it in increments to get to the form you like. All we have to do now is sew in the button here. So there's additions and exceptions. On this green bag, we made a thicker loop for a bigger button. On this blue bag, we made a thinner loop for a smaller button. A thinner loop is made with one strand sewn into these edges in the front of the flap, and a thicker edge is sewn in double yarn into the top part of the flap. It makes it more of a square look. And also the part in the front top is bigger on the greener one. So that can be adjusted when you sew your bag together.